All right, here we go. Thank you to everyone for joining today. Very excited to talk about Flux for this half-hour webinar we have going on here today. So, flexibility that the Internet on Demand delivers. This capability is inherent to the network, inherent to Lumen's capacity to be able to deliver this service, but ultimately we're helping customers execute on managing more effectively and driving cost savings, not only through spend on internet services, but also saving them time on making some of these changes manually. I want to take a quick second before I jump into Flux to talk a little bit about internet on demand. Internet on demand in general, not necessarily the Lumen definition of it, is basically the ability for a carrier to deliver a service that allows for on-demand capacity changes. Specifically, though, Lumen has created their product set known as NAS, and in that product set, IOD is their internet version of their network as a service. Change your bandwidth dynamically, either via their portal or via an API. You provision the capacity for what you need, and then you only pay for what you need. That allows for two things. It allows for greater flexibility in driving higher utilization if there's necessary, for you to need to scale up the bandwidth over what you would have previously committed to, but also conversely, be able to lower that bandwidth when you're not using that connectivity. Scalable bandwidth to be able to, on demand, increase your bandwidth as necessary. You provision for exactly what you need during that time. But then again, the reduced cost is driven by when services are not in use. You leave for the office in the morning, you're not streaming Netflix all day from 8 to 5. But when you get home at 5, you want the capacity to be able to stream Netflix. During the day, you don't need to pay for that capacity. So we're working on the opposite here with from a time standpoint, but from a still want to be able to scale the bandwidth when workers get into the office at the beginning of the day, and then scale it down when they leave the office. So, internet on demand is great. We've talked about how it can increase flexibility and reduce cost, manually change every circuit. A lot of our clients have some kind of network management service today, but ultimately some utilization has to be constantly monitored. And then not only do we have to constantly monitor utilization, but then we have to react to utilization patterns. Someone has to log in to the Lumen Connect portal or pick your carrier, your network as a service carrier provider. You have to log into that portal, change the bandwidth, and then in the future, remember to roll it back to some updated bandwidth. And then so multiply that by any kind of scale, and that becomes monotonous work. Even over 4 services, you're constantly having to coordinate the utilization across those different 4 locations, and then at some alert, log in and scale up. Wasteful of time to have someone being constantly monitoring that. So we fixed that. For interacting with the Lumen NAS API, Flux runs 24/7, managing services. We have several different ways. We have a couple of different capabilities. Schedule-based. I want to talk a little bit about these calculators. This is our primary website for Flux. And before I actually jump into the demo of the actual platform, you can see here we've got a couple of calculators to help you be able to calculate potential savings, primary methodologies that we can use to manage bandwidth for our clients. So I've talked about scheduled and auto flux. You could just set your business hours, you can set your peak bandwidth, and you can set your off-peak bandwidth. What days does this schedule apply to? And then you can see here at the top, you have an estimated monthly cost, and then you have an estimated monthly savings compared to statically running this service at the peak bandwidth for the month. As an actual client example, NAS, they have a peak bandwidth of 1 gig. They need to have 1 gig at peak bandwidth, and then off peak bandwidth, 100 meg. The client was paying $1,100 for this service dollars per site. Now move on to Auto. Allows you to scale per utilization graph over a 7-day period, where scaling up throughout the day, same circuit for that one client. You can see what AutoFlux would do with those savings, $50 for this particular service. So now saving almost $350, over $350. And you can see how AutoFlux would have managed the bandwidth for them in the preceding week period. Observed traffic is only 569 meg. They only did that one day. throughout a week. They have to have the service provision to 1 gig because they hit this peak throughout the week. They typically only need 500 meg, but a lot of the times it's low. And a lot of the times, sometimes we can even scale down to 50 meg when their actual utilization is really low. So, but we have our connections here. And so we can see all of the connections that we have from Lumen. To do that, it's really easy. We just click into our organization and we add an integration to the Lumen NAS API. You just put in a key, a secret, and a customer number. You get this from the Lumen Connect portal. You have to request permissions for the API and then once you request those permissions, you're given the permissions and then you just add an API key, copy and paste the key, the secret in here, save the settings, and then you jump back over to your connections and you sync those services in from Lumen. It'll download any of the services that are fully provisioned. So services that are turned up, it'll download them in their current state. Live internet circuit that Socium has, it's 1 meg, it's provisioned to 56 Marietta in Atlanta. And you saw a little message down in the bottom right corner here that one service is already existing, 0 were imported. It'll dynamically make that association and allocation every time we do a service, we download a service. I'm going to click into schedules first to show you how to create a schedule. It's really easy. You can see we have a couple of schedules already created. You can have multiple schedules. You can have multiple schedules with different services added to them. You can have multiple schedules with multiple services added to them. So here you can see these 2 services that I have today. This one, warehouses, it's only set for 10 minutes, but imagine that's a business days for warehouses kind of schedule. And I want to do warehouse backup. So select that same exact service. I'll select the business hours bandwidth of maybe 100 meg and then the after hours bandwidth of 1 meg. And let's just say I want to run a backup on like Saturday afternoon or something like that. So I want to run a backup from 5 p.m. on Saturday to 10 p.m. on Saturday. So here we have a 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. We'll be running at 100 meg. And then this is our normal weekly schedule. So we can have multiple services applied to different schedules, and we can have a single schedule that incorporates multiple services. So super easy to create them. Here, call this up again. You have an unlimited flexibility here, days of the week to select times, services. The only thing that you can't select is you can't scale a connection to multiple different bandwidths. Normally what we suggest is having something in here like warehouses, 500 meg, and then the business hours bandwidth for those services would be 500 meg, and then warehouses 200 meg, and those are the services that you need to scale 200 meg. I'm going to click back to connections here. And I'm going to click into the connection itself. And you can see here what we've got is the monthly cost. So I just added this to a new schedule here. I have 5 hours and 100 meg. And so it's extrapolating out based on the amount of time that is going to be, this service is going to spend in that queue or that pricing queue. It's extrapolating out what the cost is going to be. So it's spending on 162 hours, 8 hours, and 41 hours, ultimately culminating to what the projected monthly cost is going to be. So that's a pretty cool feature that we have. Projects out what the monthly cost is going to be based on what schedules this service is applied to. I'll click over to AutoFlux. Here is more business rules that you can apply to the service to automatically scale them up and scale them down. So we have the ability to enable scale ups and scale downs, and then AutoFlux in general per service. On the configuration, you set all of the thresholds. Pretty much every rule that we're using to scale these connections is configurable. You can configure the scale up threshold, the ceiling, the cooldown for both the scale up and the scale down. You can configure the hysteresis, which is essentially the number of hits in the sample window. It can scale up to the full capacity of this service and all the way down to 50 meg. And we would scale up at 80% threshold, and then we would wait no time to allow another scale up to happen. When a service was using 20% of its scaled up bandwidth, or after 60 minutes, we would then start measuring for a potential scale down. And then here's where we would say 3 polls over 5 minutes at 80% utilization, then automatically scale up. This can be set to as aggressive as you want to be. It can be set to 1 scale over 1 minute. Wouldn't necessarily recommend that because maybe get some anomalous scales, but if that's the aggressive nature you want to set that, you pick the nature of the aggression. And then, so just recently the Lumen released a rate limiting to the APIs, which allows you to only make 24 changes in 24-hour period. So we just have some business, like some logic built in to say, if this happens, if you hit 22 scales, automatically default back to 100 meg or something like that, because we don't want to be stuck in a particular scale, when we're out of changes for the day. You can see the activity. You can even see some failed attempts from this morning. But if we scroll back through here, we see a lot of completed attempts a lot of completed attempts for the schedules.